Why is Elvis considered the king of rock and roll? Number one. Number two, are there factual things that led to the mass opinion of Elvis being considered the king of rock and roll? So when we look at Elvis from the beginning, we see, some basic things like where he was born, 1935, Tupelo, Mississippi, his mom, Gladys, his dad, Vernon. Elvis moves to Memphis, Tennessee at 13, comes from a poor white family. He does have his Memphis home, Graceland Museum. Joins the Army in 1958. Priscilla Bilyeu married in 1967. And Elvis has a daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. And I think Elvis Presley in the beginning, one of the big stories is, how did Elvis even get started? Where was the draw to music, or what did he do with music? What's one of the first big things that Elvis Presley does, with music? Where's a good place to start? I guess is the question maybe I'm asking myself, and maybe something for you to think about. I believe a great place to start is when it's the very beginning, and Elvis, this is probably in 1953 or so, somewhere around there, and he's probably just graduated around that time, and Elvis Presley goes to a small local recording company called Memphis Recording Service, and he wants to make a record as a gift for his mother. Now, Memphis Recording Service, this is a recording service that's owned by Sam Phillips, and now Sam Phillips is the guy that starts Sun Records, which is really kind of that pet project that he's hoping to really get off the ground, and he most certainly does. So what you have is Memphis Recording Service where you can go in and record. Sun Records is let's record and cut records and hopefully get this thing off the ground as well. But Elvis goes to Memphis Recording Service, and the thing about it is Sam Phillips, the owner of Memphis Recording Service, and also who runs Sun Records, he wasn't there at the first recording session. But Sam Phillips' secretary was there. And Sam Phillips' secretary, whether it was Elvis warming up or she heard it had to have been, because we know that there's two originals. It's pretty expensive to, cut two originals and kind of keep one, hush hush. It's not necessarily hush hush anymore. And obviously, the story has been told and it's out, The secretary, her name is Marion Keisker. So she brings this recording to Sam. Sam checks it out. Sam Phillips is blown away by this. All these variations of this particular story go something like this. He's driving back and forth, and he's trying to decide to go in. He's maybe a little nervous or shy. He doesn't know if he wants to go in, wants to meet Sam Phillips, wants to record a song for his mom. His mom's birthday's coming up. The part of the story that we know actually is true is that his mom's birthday, Gladys' birthday, was around the corner. We do know that. The other part of the story that we know in terms of Elvis getting going and is in terms of the song, the early music, My Happiness, one of Elvis's first recordings. He goes in to record two songs, basically, and that My Happiness song, the song for his mom, and another one of the songs. But the other part of the story is Elvis, he didn't have a recording of himself. Elvis wanted to know how he sounded. Elvis Presley, he wanted to do music for his life. His passion was music. His joy was music. And to get really great at something, you got to have some kind of feedback loop. And so Elvis wants to do the whole music gig career. He wants to connect with Sam Phillips. Is the whole driving back and forth, is that even true? Is that an exaggeration? Is it possible? I mean, well, it's a small town, so sure, he's probably driving back and forth doing his regular duties. But again, these stories do get handed down. That's the tough part in Elvis, is making sure we're kind of ferreting out what are the facts and what are the opinions. Now, when we say stories behind the music, it's not just stories like a story can actually be true, right? For me, I've spent years digging into those stories that I could share with you, where it could take you hours, days, weeks, or months to find, and I can just in a snap, well, I can't snap, but in a snap, I can share with you those stories. And I think that's the heart of today and really the heart of music appreciation or the heart of American music is the stories behind the artist and the stories behind the music. I'm going to come back to that time and time again. Now, a few years ago, there was another story about this recording session in terms of, I remember reading an article, and this article said that Elvis's mom never received that recording, supposedly, and it was lost, and then it was in somebody's safe, and then so-and-so's person, grandpa or whoever, they passed away and they found this recording of Elvis. And you got to dig through all these things, and these happen all throughout history and all walks of life. So you may run into that one. I always wonder in a class, if I were to play My Happiness and you didn't know who it was and I didn't say anything, it's imagine it's day one and it's just like, hey, welcome to Music Appreciation, welcome to American music, welcome to the history of rock and roll or whatever, and I just press play and I say, okay, what do you hear or who does it sound like? Now, I haven't done that test many times, but when I have, almost nobody can recognize that it's Elvis. But there is one moment in there I want to challenge you. There's a moment in when you listen to, say, My Happiness. There's one really particular moment that if you listen to, you can hear what Elvis's Elvis voice that we know today, but it's really short and sweet. So you kind of have to listen to it over and over again to find that one spot that's like, oh, So if you listen to, say, Jailhouse Rock, or if you listen to Viva Las Vegas, those would be two big ones. And then you go back and listen to My Happiness, you can find that Elvis sound that he had not found yet in My Happiness, because he'd never heard himself he'd never heard himself on a recording. So he's still learning how to sing and play and all of that. So I'm not going to give a timestamp because that'll depend on if you listen to the version, but I could do that, later on in the comments of the video. I can find the stamp for you on the video that we use in both of my courses. Okay, Elvis wasn't Mr. Popular in crowd, wasn't making all straight A's. And yes, we talk about how Elvis crosses the lines of identity and his clothes. On the history of the active body movements with Elvis Presley, look, some people have talked about that. He just started gyrating, or maybe he was nervous, or he just moved his leg, and then all of a sudden there was these screams, and then it caused him to do more moving of his leg and his hips, and then Elvis Pelvis, and then talking about how Elvis was doing it on purpose to get all the girls' attention. Or there's some history that says, hey, Elvis was blocked from the waist down on this performance or that performance or whatever, because this was not socially acceptable. This kind of dancing was not just what wasn't allowable. It went against the societal norms of, this is too provocative, supposedly. Elvis did eventually get shown from the waist down. He wasn't always cropped out or cut on all the shows. He does become, pretty well known. He wasn't super outgoing and gregarious necessarily, and he wasn't, Mr. Popular, but it's going to change pretty quickly. Elvis auditions for the school variety show. I guess you would call that a talent show. And there's a lot of variations of this story that go around. One of the variations in terms of the variety show is, as what we call talent show, is that Elvis, they say that he auditioned and he didn't pass the audition, or that a teacher, gave him some negative comments, and he didn't do very well on the audition, and he didn't make it in supposedly. There's other stories that say, well, no, that's not right. What happened was Elvis was in a class or whatever, some kind of arts or music class or general class, and people were taking turn doing some kind of presentation. Maybe when he did this for the class or audition or whatever it was, that he didn't have his guitar. Maybe he just sang, or maybe he just played guitar and he didn't sing. Again, there's so many variations of the story. What we do know is that Elvis came back another day and he sang and played guitar, and everyone just went crazy in a good way. Whoa, he can sing and play guitar. And then after that, he's on the variety show, Hume's High School variety show, talent show, and it blows up. Everyone's whoa, wow, and that's when people really started man, this guy's awesome. Man, he's got some skills, So we talk about the Elvis image, that as he's going, where we're talking about a combination of, say, African-American and lower-class whites. He does get to this whole vibe of black leather jacket, open shirts, upturned collars, get the long sideburns, hair greased back into a ducktail, these kind of things with the image. Now, I want to share the radio station story as best I can years ago on the radio, where they're just talking about Elvis and his music. and someone just happens to know Elvis is around town, maybe it's a movie theater, they go grab him. They bring him to the studio. And the question they know they can ask, and no one's going to get in trouble. It's not against the law. It's socially acceptable. It's all good. Is, so Elvis, can you share with our listeners where you went to high school? And Elvis says, oh, thank you very much. I don't know if he said that. But what Elvis did say was Humes High School. Why is that important? Because in Elvis's time, that was a high school for all whites. So then everybody heard that on the radio. Now they know, oh, we can actually play Elvis on our radio station. And then other radio stations are like, oh, man, maybe we can't play him on ours. Of course, that's going to change because you can't get number one songs on pop, R&B, and C&W without actually like breaking the rules. And so, yeah, it's about to go down. You know, the first trio for Elvis ends up being Elvis Presley, you know, guitar and singing. And then you have Bill Black on bass and Scotty Moore on, you know, lead guitar. And then Scotty Moore is Elvis's first manager. So if we take a look at Bob Neal, his second manager, you know, Bob Neal doesn't get enough credit for this, and I really wish he would. What can I tell you in the short and sweet on Bob Neal? Radio station, DJ, record store, Memphis. You know, he's representing Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison, Jerry Lee Lewis. But I want to reiterate, if there's one thing I would say on Bob Neal, his second, it's the Elvis Presley Enterprises. If he had not started Elvis Presley Enterprises, I'm not sure we'd be where we are today in terms of like the whole Elvis Presley like brand and flow and company and merchandising and like, you know, ticket sales. And you just think about like, you know, an artist that, you know, stand the test of time. It's not that they're all money hungry. It's not that they're not chasing fame and glory and want to be rich. In fact, a lot of times it's the opposite. What else did Bob do? You know, Country Music Service in 1964, Director of Country Music Association 1970s, Country Music Disc. I mean, he's just got, you know, Disc Jockey 1984. He's just got these long list of you know, awesomeness. There's this guy, Colonel Tom Parker. Maybe we can bring the Colonel in to help us just keep moving forward. The original idea or intent with Colonel Tom Parker was actually just to come in and help the team, not completely take over. While Colonel Tom Parker, he was definitely a shrewd insider, worked with Eddie Arnold and Hank Snow. He wasn't actually a real colonel. He wanted to call himself a colonel. One of Elvis's big things that he wanted to do his whole life was to go to Japan and do a concert in Japan. And sure, not just Japan. Elvis wanted to travel the world. He wanted to do gigs. The hidden story for many, many years was that Tom Parker couldn't leave the country. If he did, he wouldn't have been allowed back in, ever. The fact of the matter is, the Colonel did. Every time Elvis brought up, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that, the Colonel was really great about pivoting the conversation, about saying, hey, Elvis, why don't you do this instead? Elvis wants to, you know, travel the world, or Elvis wants to go to Japan or wherever he wants to go. And then the Colonel's like, well, why don't you do movies? Because the whole world will see you in movies. You know, and he's like, and then Elvis comes around, okay, we could do that. The conversation comes up again, and the Colonel's like, well, why don't we do a comeback special instead? Televised comeback special. More people will see you. There's no argument. He's, oh, okay, great, cool. We get this again, you know. You know, Elvis wants to travel the world, Japan being at the top of the list, and then the Colonel's like, well, why don't we do a satellite special? So they're pretty, I don't want to say three amazing pivots, because we all have mixed sentiments about the whole movie, like, you know, the movie vibe of Elvis. While the Colonel did actually pivot him 3 times with the whole movie gig, and then the comeback special gig, and then the Aloha from Hawaii satellite gig. That was some 3 big pivots, but the conversation, that was always the same. Elvis wanted to travel the world, tour the world, music, share his love and passion and joy for music, and there was always a pivot. And we didn't really know why until Colonel Tom Parker passed away. And maybe we found, it's possible, maybe somebody figured out the whole puzzle in Colonel Tom Parker's lifetime. You know, maybe that's even still being argued. Well, who know and when and all that kind of stuff, you know. The really awesome thing the Colonel did is he got him like over to RCA Victor. $40,000 is a lot of money to go from Sun Records to RCA Victor. And this is all by the blessing of, like, you know, like Elvis wanted this and Sam wanted this. It basically got to a point. So just imagine, you know, records, little 45s or whatever it was. Just imagine that you've got to be able to produce a certain number of them. Like, imagine like boxes and boxes and boxes filled with records. And there's only so many that like Sun Records could actually do. So it got to be a point of they just couldn't like keep up with that, you know, because Elvis did end up coming back and still doing all kinds of like recording things. recording projects with other people and studios, and like Sun Records is always like a big home. Memphis Recording Studio, Sun Records, a huge home and love for Elvis throughout his life to return and do gigs there, return and do recordings there. But for Sam knew that like Elvis's next step was to get to that bigger company in terms of like to help market him and in terms of distribution. So marketing and distribution, it was just Elvis is at a point where it's like, hey, we got to get to that next spot, that next level. And the Colonel helped negotiate this and get that happen, and he did a great job there. Now, the other bummer about the Colonel, I suppose, that doesn't get talked about enough is where Bob Neal could have continued running all of this for Elvis, but he never signed the contract. We don't know for sure if the Colonel maybe intimidated Bob Neal. Maybe he was intimidating, or what did Bob just like? Okay, I'm gonna move forward. But I mean, yeah, maybe the Colonel did possibly intimidate Bob Neal into not, because Bob had a contract on his desk. All he had to do, he could have kept running the show, and the Colonel could have been more like in a consultant role. At the same time, there was certainly some good of the Colonel bringing him over. I mean, pretty awesomeness to bringing him over to RCA Victor. But those pivot conversations certainly are like, man, this is just a lot of stuff to kind of chew on. So I'll kind of leave that for you to think about in terms of the managers. So the story of the Louisiana Hayride goes like this. DJ Fontana was the house drummer at the Louisiana Hayride. Elvis, Scotty, and Bill are currently a trio. Scotty chats with DJ, and he asked him to join the trio on the Hayride show. So all studios, even in today's times, they have like studio musicians. So basically they're on standby if you need them. Now, it's the same thing for like a show that you watch where they've got like the house band that will play, of course, live on the shows. But those musicians will actually accompany like other musical guest acts as well. And you actually have a roster of substitutes and different players that can come in and out. Like DJ's the house drummer, Louisiana Hayride. The trio's on tour. They're not a quartet yet. They're going to be soon. And they do the radio show. It's like it's a banger. And then Elvis is like, "Whoa, you want to go on tour with us?" And boom, DJ Fontana is now the drummer for Elvis. Here's a story of Elvis's Vibe by Ronnie Tutt, his Vegas drummer. He's working with Ludwig, and they got these new drums coming out, Vista Light, acrylic drums, known for their attack and crystalline looks. I've talked about in previous lectures about John Bonham, When the Levee Breaks, Led Zeppelin. I mean, he's one of the guys that made these drums like pretty darn famous. You probably can go out and look at pictures and hear some stuff on that. Ron played with Elvis in these years, and one of their opening nights in Vegas, they're on stage doing their thing, and Elvis just keeps kind of looking at him, like giving him a weird and odd look. And Ronnie's like confused, like, I don't know what's going on, like in his mind, he talks about this. So you can hear Ronnie talk about this on the National Association of Music Merchants, the Music History Project. I think I want to say it's probably in the first Elvis Part 1, I believe. So you can take a listen. But basically after the show, there's a tap. Sorry, I just knocked on my desk. And it's on Ron's dressing room door. And the person says, "Elvis wants to see you." So Ronnie walks into Elvis's dressing room. Elvis is pacing back and forth. And then finally, because Elvis didn't want to look at him. He didn't want to look. And he stops and he says, "Ronnie, do you like those new drums?" And then Ronnie's like, "Well, Elvis, I think they look beautiful, but they sound terrible." I remember listening to that the first time years ago, and I just started busting out laughing. I was like, wow. I'd never heard that story years ago. I was like, wow, it really says a lot about like Elvis. He didn't want to tell, Ronnie that he didn't like his drums or they sounded bad. Elvis wanted to hear what Ronnie thought. Now, what if Ronnie or Ron Tutt, what if he had said the drums sound amazing? Elvis, I don't know, who knows where he would have gone, but he wasn't going to call Ronnie out, and he wasn't going to say. He wanted to hear, Ronnie's thoughts. That's the kind of person that he was. Look, there's stories of Elvis. Elvis is in the studio. He's doing a big collab with a whole bunch of people. It's really awesome. Somebody makes a mistake. Somebody misses a note, or maybe somebody's a little flat or sharp or whatever, and they're like, "Elvis, hey, can we do another run on that?" And Elvis's response would typically almost always be the same. "Guys, it felt good. That felt good." I don't know if he said the word vibe, if that was even a thing, but Elvis did talk about the feeling in music. If something felt good while you were playing, there's just something when you're an artist, and whether you're on stage or in the studio, there's a feeling that you get inside of you. It's kind of a tingly kind of sensation. And when it happens, it's like So maybe there was a wrong note, but Elvis didn't like re-recording to make something perfect. If it felt good, let's keep it. Don't, it's like most people aren't going to hear that anyways. Now, sure, there's records and albums and like, live things where it's like there's mistakes or there's albums where in the Elvis library where they did record it, 10 times or 30 times or maybe they did do some overdubbing or splicing. Sure, yes, that's going to exist in all periods in terms of, so it's not like one shot, let's just record it once. It felt good. No, it takes a lot of takes probably to get that feeling. But Elvis is just like, hey, if we've recorded it this many times or we're doing this or that or whatever, did you enjoy making music and that song right then and there, and did it feel good, And if the answer is unanimous yes, it can't be like, yes, but I missed a note. So what, So that was I think, a cool thing for Mr. Elvis Presley. How about the story of the original drum set? Okay, so the guy's name is Herb Brochstein. Herb opens a drum shop in Houston. This is Houston, Texas, in the 1950s, and he sold Elvis his first drum kit. Elvis and DJ Fontana were looking for some drums, stopped by the store. I think at the time, so they were a quartet. It was Elvis Presley, Scotty Moore, Bill Black, DJ Fontana. Herb remembers Elvis pulling up in his pink Cadillac to the store. In the interview that Herb's done a couple, but in one of the interviews that I saw, like Herb said that he saw Elvis and DJ, and then he also mentioned Bill Black. He said, I'm not sure if Scotty was there, but at any rate, you got Elvis and DJ checking out all the drums in the store. They didn't find anything they liked, and then, there's like a drum set, hidden or just kind of pushed off to the side somewhere, typical of like musicians that own drum stores. At least for him, he had his kind of drums just off to the side. Now, in modern day times, we have them in like our private rooms or offices at our places, or whatever. But anyway, Elvis and DJ checked out all the drums. They didn't find drums that they like, and Elvis notices that drum set off to the side, and he's like, "Hey Herb, can I take a look at that drum set?" And he's like, "Oh, that's my drum set, but sure, you can go take a look, check it out." And at the time, Herb had not heard anything about Elvis except like one of his friends asked him. I don't know if it was days or weeks or somewhere before Elvis had even visited. Herb had some kind of conversation with a friend about, where his friend's like, "Hey, have you heard of this Elvis guy yet?" And no, who's that guy? And then they're explaining it to Herb, and Herb is like, and Herb's response, even in the the interview, is like, he sounds like a hillbilly-ish kind of musician or something like that. Elvis wasn't that big yet. He was getting there. It was actually about to happen. It actually happens very soon after this whole drum story. So Herb was a big, he's a jazz artist, and Herb was always playing on different kinds of drum sets and configurations. And I think that drum set at the time probably was a Gretsch drum set that Herb was actually gigging on for his jazz gigs, and that may have been the one Elvis had taken. So Elvis really liked Herb's drum set, and he's like, "Hey, can I buy your drum set?" And Herb sold his own drum set to Elvis. But to me, the really interesting thing in the history is that this happened all the time, according to Herb. In the interview, he mentioned something like 20 to 30 of his own drum sets, and probably the same thing, where he Herb's got his own, drum shop, and maybe he was picking the best one, or maybe he just picked the drum set that he liked. Maybe he just found the drums that he liked, and this is all really, really opinion. But either way, it's not like, oh, I'm going to I'm going to take the best drum set for myself, and everyone else can just figure it out. That Herb wasn't like that. He'd get some drums in, and he was always testing out, like, okay, I'm gonna try these drums for a little bit, and then he would sell them. So it seemed to be kind of a common thing where he was a gigger and he was selling drums, so he wanted to always stay fresh and new with his gig and kit, and that just kind of happened to be the one. Maybe it's broken in, it's played. He's trying like the new, cool, and different things. Maybe whatever the case may be, Elvis buys it. And one day, Herb opens up Life magazine. He sees his drums on the stage for the Ed Sullivan Show in Life magazine. He really got a kick out of that. The drums he sold Elvis Presley are now legendary. Man, how awesome is that? Mike Ladd is a guitar maker. He's got this guitar shop across from Graceland, Elvis Presley Boulevard. That's Elvis's house. And Vernon, Elvis's father, comes into Mike Ladd, and he says, Elvis's birthday's coming up. I want you to design something special. So Mike started working, and he came up with something pretty awesome. It's like he came up with like what he thought was just a really great guitar and phenomenal. Yeah, oh yeah, it was awesome. Mike finished the guitar. He was sent a martial arts sticker. In the interview, I think he mentions the word karate. Later on, he says in the interview, he says that they sent him a taekwondo sticker. Maybe it was a kenpo sticker, but at any rate, he didn't want to put the sticker on. And when he said that, it got me thinking. Well, in his mind, he probably think it's like if you put a sticker on a guitar like that, it's like a cardinal sin or sacrilegious, or it's just as simple as like they're like in Mike's mind, he's like they're going to ruin the guitar by putting a sticker. Maybe Mike didn't want to put the sticker on. He wasn't going to do it. That's it. I am not putting the sticker on. Now, who sent him the sticker? I'd have to get the details. Probably somebody in the Elvis, like one of the, basically like not Elvis himself, but somebody within Elvis's crew, or who knows? Maybe it was a friend, maybe it was his dad. The part of this, like, who actually gave the sticker? I don't know. I think everyone's probably still trying to figure that out, and some website's going to say, I know who did it. This person gave the sticker, and maybe they're right. But I think the point of the matter is that you can act like whoever gave the sticker, whoever it was, Elvis didn't walk in and do it. Elvis had somebody give Mike that sticker when the guitar was done before Elvis or his dad went to pick it up. That is the facts. And so then what from there? Then the other part of it is, you can go online and you can see the guitar, you can see the sticker. But how did that happen? Because Mike wasn't going to do it. Well, on the interview, Mike says, he hears the phone ring, he picks up the phone, and on the other side, he hears a voice, and it says, "Are you Mike Ladd?" And then Mike says, "Yes, sir." And then the next voice Mike Ladd hears is Elvis's voice, and Elvis goes, "Put the damn sticker on, man." The other guy's like, "Well, did he really say that?" And Mike's like, "Well, maybe he said, 'Put the damn sticker on, boy.'" Click. And then he hung up. Whatever it was, so is that the exact words that Elvis said, or maybe not? Maybe it's an exact. Maybe Either way, it sure is a great story. So look, Elvis could sing, dance. Elvis could play guitar. Everybody loved him. Elvis is in Las Vegas. This is before Elvis had a Vegas show. Elvis was just hanging, chilling, doing his Las Vegas thing. He hears Freddie Bell and the Bellboys give their version of Hound Dog. The song was written, Hound Dog was written by Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller. You can verify this on the internet if you like. The first recorded version is by Big Mama Thornton. Elvis's cover version of Hound Dog becomes very popular. This thing blows up, and you have a part that slows down on the live performance on YouTube that was not planned, and you can hear some of the musicians talk about that in different articles and or interviews. Elvis does that slowdown thing on a whim in one of the YouTube videos. So look, the original song written by Leiber and Stoller, this is around 1952 for blues diva Big Mama Thornton. It's a huge hit in the R&B charts, probably around 53 or so. It wasn't rock and roll, it was straight up blues, and Elvis's version is around like 1956. And really, Elvis's version was an imitation of Freddie Bell's parody of the original song. Elvis changed the lyrics, so it became a song about a dog. Okay. But really, this song was an angry song for a woman who was really pissed off at her man who played around on her. That's an exact quote from Jerry Leiber, not my words. Elvis is singing to a real dog, which is not right at all from Jerry Leiber's opinion, and he's the guy that wrote the song for Big Mama. Really, it was a collaboration between Jerry, between Jerry Leiber, Mike Stoller, and Big Mama. They went to hang out with her and visit with her to get like the flow and the vibe, and this is all Big Mama's words in terms of the song is that's her. That's Big Mama's lyrics. The record that is celebrated to this day is Elvis's, and Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller not so happy about that. They feel like Big Mama's got lost in translation, and her record should be the one that's celebrated, and it's not. This is where the whole Chuck D, Public Enemy, and Elvis stole African American music, and you got lots of other people digging into this. And did Elvis still like African American people's music? Yes and no. Not how Chuck D explains or talks about it. Chuck D's he's not wrong, but he's also not right. He's getting some things right, and he's getting some things wrong. But the question is, when I tell you this next part, it's like, well, okay, this is really getting jumbled. Look, Col Tom Parker was basically just going to people and saying, hey, Elvis wants to sing your song. here's a piece of paper. I want you to sign away your rights to the song, and it's now going to be Elvis's. And that happened on a lot of music. And so, and a lot of that was, the Colonel going to, people writing songs and Elvis taking those. As Chuck D says, not Mr. S, Chuck D was like, Elvis is stealing black people's music, but it wasn't like him specifically. The thing is like, was Elvis aloof to all this, or was there a certain point where he knew that some of this was going on? It's almost unfair, and I mean no disrespect to Elvis, not at all. Like, Elvis probably knew or figured out something at some point. The question is, like, when and how much. Elvis wasn't stealing people's music. The Colonel was muscling a lot of that stuff out. But at some point, it's like, man, Elvis had to have kind of figured some of these things out, And you can find journal and written accounts of like Elvis talking about these particular songs. Bottom line is if you take somebody else's song, whether you ask permission or not, like, first of all, you ask permission and you pay the royalties to the person that wrote the song. And so that's the issue, is there's all these songs out there that Elvis kind of snatched up, and there was a big part of that from the Colonel, like getting the rights. And then they didn't get any money for it. Like, once they signed it, it was like, Elvis wants your song. They signed the paper, right? And then like they get no money for it. See, that was the issue I think Chuck D had. Check out Big Mama's version of Hound Dog. It's like something actually that like Big Mama experienced in her life, and you can hear it. And maybe even something that happened to other people, possibly. Elvis doesn't have that same connection to the song. The collaboration of like, the person that maybe writes the chords and the melody, or maybe like the hook or whatever, and then a songwriter like does the lyrics. Man, there's a lot of magic that happened. That's basically what you had with Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller collaborating with Big Mama. So they get like the music and the flow and like, melody, and like, okay, where do you want to sing it at, and like, scales and pitches and range, and okay, what do you want the song to be about? And it's the lyrics are Big Mama's. It's her. It's her. And that kind of music. It's like the story. It's very personal. To you. So yeah, that's the story of Hound Dog. Check out that 1968 comeback special. Take a look at Aloha from Hawaii if you ever get some free time. Look at Jailhouse Rock, GI Blues, Viva Las Vegas, Love Me Tender. I mean, 31 films, 784 songs, 1,684 concerts. We talk about the importance of Presley. It's like multifaceted personality, versatile. Appeals beyond the typical rock star, the looks and the hood, and he's religious and he's patriotic. He's like, Mr. and Mrs. and yes sir and no sir, and doesn't want to, Elvis doesn't like to argue and call people out or criticize. He's just a very happy-go-lucky, kind of guy. And Elvis could, he could shout, and he could do soft rock and hymns and gospel and country and patriotic anthems, social commentary, escapism, tearjerkers. Man, this is a big list here. And when you look at the end here in terms of like commercial success, yes, 500 million copies of records sold by the time of his death, 1 billion records sold worldwide, album singles certified gold, platinum, or multi-platinum. That's huge. Heartbreak Hotel, #1 in 2006. Man, this is some like serious awesomeness. Now, we lost Elvis too soon. He died of heart-related problems in Memphis at his home in Graceland, and it's sad. Let me reiterate. It's August 16th, 1977. Elvis, I believe he's 42. In the latter part of Elvis's life, he struggled. Elvis lost his mom, and he was pretty young, and many of us have kind of talked and speculated and argued and just really chatted for years and years and years, and will continue to do so, that when Elvis lost his mom at such a young age, he never fully recovered. Did he mourn properly? If so, what does that mean? Did Elvis get over his mom? And what I mean is, Elvis struggled with, substances, and he had these battles of just, kind of really extreme up and down in terms of health and wellness with his struggles. We definitely lost Elvis too soon. The big thing we're trying to ponder is like, is Elvis really the king of rock and roll? He did bring music to the masses that may have not otherwise made it to the masses because of the times and pre-civil rights. And while that may not appease the masses, and some people might, like, they're going to get mad at me for saying that, it is true. Elvis brought music to the world that maybe we wouldn't have heard because of, the tumultuous times of separate but equal, and before we had, civil rights in the United States of America. So history is not sugar and spice and everything nice. So we've kind of got to acknowledge, like, what are the facts versus what are the opinions, and really kind of get at the heart or crux of all those things. So yeah, that's all I have on Elvis.